Hey everybody, it's Kyle. Hey, today I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how there was a time when I was really failing my kids, especially my kids on the autism spectrum, and how I discovered something that was really simple and easy that basically turned me into a more patient father almost overnight. And you probably ought to know a little bit about my past, and some of you already know this, but when I was growing up, I kind of grew up in a rough neighborhood, and I started to create this belief that violence or the threat of violence was a very good motivator. And it was for me as a kid because of where I grew up and the things that were surrounding me. And I carried that belief into my home, specifically with my first two sons who were typical when they were born. If they didn't behave well, I would... I didn't really have to spank them much, but the threat of spanking was enough to get them to do things. And I'll never forget the day that it really dawned on me that this was just a bad idea altogether. Because my wife had told me that the boys were afraid of me, and it didn't really bother me. I said, good. My two oldest sons were probably 6 and 4 at the time, and they were doing stuff and all those kind of things that 6 and 4-year-old boys do. And one day I was sitting in the living room, and from their room I heard a smash, and they had taken these foam swords that kids have to play with, and it accidentally reached up and hit a ceiling light, smashed it, and it crashed to a hardwood floor. And I remember running into the room, and both of the boys were up against one wall, scared like this. And I recalled thinking about what my face looked like, and I know I looked angry because I was. And they were scared, and it was an accident. They hadn't done this on purpose, but I had trained them that they should be scared when they did something wrong, even if it was an accident. And I won't go into too many details, but I will tell you this: the threat of violence or spanking did not work at all when it came to my son on the autism spectrum. As a matter of fact, it made everything worse. When he was having problems, if I would come in and try to intimidate, he would get worse. He would get madder and madder. And if I did spank him, it would be over the top crazy, really bad. Now, you'll have to forgive me because I didn't even know he was autistic until he was about 4.5 years old. So I had to learn some things. And at that point I realized, this was just a bad method. The idea that my kids would be afraid of me, or that I had to use intimidation to keep them in line, or as a disciplinary action was a bad deal. I didn't like that idea, but growing up where I did, it was what I thought was the right way to do it, and it was what I believed. And so I really had to figure out a way to change that belief. And at that moment where I saw my two boys cowering, I started a journey of trying to figure that one out. And at one point, when I realized that it was making everything worse with my son on the autism spectrum, I really had to heighten my search. And I found a method that I was able to apply immediately, and it changed me. And I'm so happy it did, because as my son on the autism spectrum, as all my sons have grown older, the last thing I want to do is discipline through intimidation and fear. First of all, because at some point they got bigger than me, and they're all bigger than me now. I have 4 sons that are basically bigger than me, and I'm not a small man. But if I had continued to run down that path, I know what would have happened, and that would have been, they would have realized that doesn't work, and they probably would have fought back. And at one point, one of my sons on the spectrum became violent, and luckily, I was able to rely on the technique that I learned, that had changed me into a more patient and kind father, because that's what he needed when he had meltdowns and started to become violent. He needed me to be kind and patient. The old Kyle would have just dropped him like a sack of dirt. But the new Kyle knew that that's not what he needed. What he needed was me to be triggered into a more kind and patient state when he got into a worse state. And so if you know, I get asked all the time by people who see me working with my son, how are you so dang patient? And it's because of that one moment in my life where I learned that method that triggers me into that more patient state. So that's one of the things we teach in our program. If patience is a problem for you, if you get frustrated or aggravated, or in my case, I just used to get angry, we can teach you how to trigger yourself into a more productive state immediately. And as I can attest to, it's long lasting. It's not something that works for a while and then disappears. It's something that you train yourself to do, and it's very easy, and that becomes who you are at your core, because the more you practice it, the more it becomes you. And you change those beliefs, and you become the parent you need to be for your kids on the spectrum. So if you're interested in that, click on the link below. It'll take you to a registration page where you can register for a masterclass that'll show you and talk to you about some of those things that we've done as a family that's allowed us to thrive in the chaos of raising our kids on the spectrum. That's what our mission is as a family, is to help you thrive as you raise your kids. That's what we do now, and that's what we want for you. So click on that link, go check us out, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.